Welcome back, guys. Doing a video on a topic that I get a lot of questions when people that are not truck drivers run into me or talk to me. They have a tendency to ask, the questions about how the industry works and things that you experience on a day-to-day basis. And so one of those questions that I get a lot is something you see when you drive as a non-truck driver, and you may wonder about when you're driving and then don't think about a lot until maybe you talk to a truck driver. So wanted to do a video today because today is the first time in almost 5 years. Next week will be my 5 years, so I'll be recording that video shortly on 5 years with Prime, but about way stations. It's probably one of the top questions when I just, if I've met somebody new, say I'm a truck driver, they say, "Oh, do you have to go into the weigh station?" I always wonder what that's all about and how that works. And so I wanted to do a video, and fairly quick here, just to go through what weigh stations are, how they work, and what the process is. And I'm doing the video because for the first time today, not the first time I've ever gone to a weigh station. I've been through weigh stations many times, but today is the first time I got pulled in for an inspection at a weigh station. So I wanted to kind of talk about what happens, how that all works, and what the process is with weigh stations. So obviously, if you're not a truck driver, you still see weigh stations as you're driving down interstates or secondary roads. U.S. highways will have them occasionally, and they're operated largely by the state police for wherever you are driving. So driving in Indiana today, had a delivery from Decatur to Indianapolis, and I-69 has a weigh station just south of Decatur. It's southbound only. They used to have a northbound weigh station there, but it's been out of service for quite some time. And if you drive past weigh stations, you'll notice that they have signs that say open or closed. And then you may also notice that there are signs that say AVI trucks follow signals, or trucks follow in-cab signs or signals, or some things along those lines. And what that has to do with, you may hear, if you have satellite radio, ads for Prepass or DriveWise. Those are pre-screen, and I've shown it briefly in the technology video when I talked about some of the technology that's in the truck. I'll show a picture real quick here of the Prepass module that sits on the windshield. Similar to, EasyPass, if you're familiar with toll systems, it's just a little battery-operated device that sits on the windshield, and there are arms that overhang the highway, and that device, so when you go underneath, will beep. There's a kind of pleasant-sounding beep, beep, beep when you get a green light, which green light obviously means you can just go. And even if the weigh station is open, you don't have to stop in. If you get a kind of fast beep, 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 and a red light, that means you do have to pull in. Those services are operated on a fleet level. So what happens is, it's called a CSA score. It's basically a safety score for the entirety of Prime. The entire company has a safety score, and depending on what your company's safety score is, you can qualify to have that device in your truck or not have that device in the truck. And then based on your score as well, will determine how often you get pulled into a weigh station. So if your company has a very good safety score, you're not going to get pulled in very often. And how do they determine if you have a good safety score? Obviously accidents, and then roadside inspections. And roadside inspections there's 3 different kinds: level 1, level 2, level 3. And they're everything from, we're just going to do a basic walk around. Let's do an inspection and check what, is going on with your driver's license. Do you have all the proper endorsements that you need to have? And then there's the full, let's open the hood, let's get underneath the truck, let's measure the, actually get measurements out and measure brake pads, measure tread depth, go through the entire very involved process. So there's levels of inspections. So what I had was a walk-around inspection today. Also had to go in and they checked my driver's license, make sure it's still valid, make sure I had my medical card on file with the state, make sure that the endorsements, that I have a tanker endorsement because I'm driving a tanker vehicle, have an air brake, don't have an air brake restriction on my license. All of those things are what they're going to check when you get pulled in. Now, that doesn't happen every single time that you pull into a weigh station. Obviously, by its very nature, they're going to check the weight of the truck if you get pulled in. But that's not even all of what it's about, because there's two different basic kinds of weigh stations. So here in Indiana, the one I just went through, everybody goes over the scale. And really, everybody goes over a scale at every weigh station, but there are two kinds of scales where this scale here in Indiana, everybody gets on a scale that measures the weight at your 3 sets of axles. So you have a drive axle, you have the steer axles, and then the trailer axles are all weighed individually, and then you add that up and you have the entire vehicle. 34,000 pounds, 34,000 pounds, 12,000 pounds, as far as what you can have on the trailer, the drive, and on your steer tires. Add that up to 80,000 pounds. So it matters, and that's where we get into with that backing video. I talked a little bit about sliding the fifth wheel, sliding the tandems on our reefer trailers. Some weigh stations, and when I was in Kentucky yesterday, they have scales where you get pulled in and you go over it's called a weigh-in motion. So you drive over it at a slow rate of speed, 15 miles an hour, perhaps 20 miles an hour. And it gets a quick reading. If you're close to that 80,000 pounds, or if it shows that you're over 80,000 pounds, it will have you pull in to do the axled weight scale. Now, I got pulled in actually yesterday as well in Kentucky. I was empty at the time, and so what you get is a bypass. So you go over that weigh-in motion scale, and then you bypass the closer scale. Now, they still may pull you in for an inspection because they're looking, and as you're driving by, they may see a mirror hanging off the side of your truck, or a headlight that's cracked or something along those lines. So they may still pull you in even though you're not overweight. So they're looking for a lot of different things. Basically, if you've studied the pre-trip at all, which is part of getting your CDL, is knowing the pre-trip, knowing, you're checking your lights, you're checking a lot, the mirrors, the airlines, you're checking the brakes, the tires, all of the things that are, you check underneath the hood. You're checking a majority of those items. The walk-around is obviously a lot less. They're just visually looking real quick. And then they check the lights as well and make sure, your turn signals, your four-ways, brake lights, backup light, all of those, they make sure they function as well. But it's really a pretty simple procedure, and then they let you go on your way. They give you a piece of paper that says you had no violations, and if there is violations, obviously they'll give you a ticket for being out of service perhaps, and if it's an out of service violation, they're not going to let you leave the weigh station at all. And out of service violations can be a number of different things. So there are serious violations that you're not allowed to be on the road if you are in violation of one of those particular things. You got a mirror hanging off, you're going to be an out of service violation. You have tread depth that's lower than, and it's 230 seconds on your trailer and drive tires and 430 seconds on your steer tires. That's not a lot of tread, but if you have less than that, they're not going to let you go back out onto the highway. So there's a number of things where they're not going to let you go back out, and they will make you call at repair service. You're overweight, they may not let you go out back out on the highway, and they'll have to have your company come and make repairs on site at the weigh station. But that's the way a weigh station works. They also obviously, want to see your registration. Prime has a permit book. This permit book has every single thing you could ever want as far as permits, insurance cards, the registration for the vehicle, all of the different things. There's page upon page of permits for all the different states for whatnot. So you can just bring this book in. They expect that you know what's in this book, and that's one of those things that you'll go over in training. They don't want you to just say, here's my permit book. They want to know that you know what's in the permit book, and you hand them the registration to the vehicle, and the registration for the trailer, which Prime has a small little cylinder, which the permits are kept, or the registration is kept in on the trailer. But that's how weigh stations work. Again, I've been pulled in multiple times over the 5 years I've been doing this. But that should give you an idea of the fact that I've driven, for 5 years, and this is the first time I've ever been pulled in for a roadside inspection. It's not incredibly common, especially if you keep your vehicle in good working order. If you do the right thing and do your pre-trip, make sure you don't have any lights out, make sure you don't have a mirror hanging off of the truck, you don't have cracked air lines, you're not going to get pulled in all that often. I kind of had a bit of a suspicion when I drove into the weigh station, because there were no vehicles there were no trucks in front of me, and there were no trucks off to the side being inspected. So I thought, this might be a little bit of bad luck on my part, where they might just be waiting for the next one to come along, and they're just going to do an inspection, and that ended up being the case. But that's how weigh stations work. Obviously, you can be inspected at any time. The police can just pull you over and do an inspection. They can do it, they could drive up to me if I'm parked at a rest area, in a public place anyway. They can't come into the terminal unless Prime gives them permission, and I would be very surprised if Prime gave them permission to come in and do inspections on vehicles. But at any rate, that's how the weigh station works. Again, it's a question that I get asked fairly frequently. Thought folks might be interested. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something about weigh stations and about trucking. Going to do the next video probably next week or two, and it will be on 5 years at Prime. I am fast approaching 5 years working for Prime. I'm actually over 5 years since I came to Prime for my training, but my Prime anniversary is February 12th, so that is coming up next week when I release this video. So I'll be recording that sometime next week, and then might come out in 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching. As always, if you have any questions or comments, comment below or send an email directly to me. That email address is down there as well, and there is an application. Click on the link, it takes you right to it. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.